Report on this computer. So welcome everybody to our Cyberops Associate. I've had one of the students in class say that they're having problems with 3.2.11. And I'm gonna go and pull that one up real quick. So let's go in here and grab module 3 to 4 content. I'll also explain, I know Gail got confused, so I'll explain some other things, but lab 3.2.11 was, by the way, the quickest way to get to labs, folks, is you can just go here to your course index, uncheck everything, and then check labs, and it will take you just to the lab. So that's a good way to do that. But exploring processes and threads. If we look at this lab, scroll down here, wherever it's got to be at the bottom down here, get right there. And we open it here, you will notice that there is, I believe, a section in here where it's going to have you ping something, or did it ping? No, I don't even see it. So yeah, I don't think actually this one was the one that didn't even have a ping. No, but one of the things I want you to be aware of is make sure in NetLabs, make sure you're using the content from in here. So if it doesn't have this blue box, if you're not doing the lab using this blue box, you could run into issues. So on this one, really, I know it shows it should be on the 192.168 network. If you look at the topology, 192.168.0.0, this lab will work just fine with it not getting a DHCP address. So if I go in here and send Control Delete, and let's see here. Use the right password. Okay. Even though this lab gives you I believe it's a 169 IP address, it really does not matter on this particular lab because the lab will work perfectly fine without having that 192.168 IP address, because it's just looking at, oh man, I cannot type today. Still can't type. Yeah, it's got a 169 IP address, but the lab itself doesn't matter. All you're looking at is the processes on the local machine. So apologize if that caused any confusion, but that won't affect the output of the lab. But do make sure you're using the content from inside this tab. Otherwise, I can't guarantee the labs will work like they're supposed to. So if we go out here to this one, exploring DNS traffic, again, if we look here, this lab has been changed. You will see they're actually, I believe, having you pull a folder, a file from the DNS. So again, that's why it's not, even though you get the IP address and now it actually should be getting one here. So let's look and see if this one fails too. If it fails, then I've got the same issue I've got on another machine. So it should have, there should be actually in the background a router booting for this particular pod, or a switch or something booting that's giving out IP addresses. And it didn't work. So it looks like on this lab there is a problem with the ability to get a DHCP address. Yep, it should be getting a 192.168.0.10. So on this lab, be aware there will be an issue right now. I'm on pod 2, but I believe this is happening on all the pods. So if it does not work right now, I'll explore it and try to figure out what I can do to fix it. So I don't know. I know I'm running the most recent versions. But yeah, you should be getting a 192.168.0.10 IP address, and obviously DHCP is not working. So I'll explore this and try to figure out why this particular one is not working. Now we got here, no internet. It looks like there's no adapter. Nope. Let's go back. Let's go back here and check something here. Let's go to Ethernet. Change adapter options. So we've got this adapter is there. So let's disable it. Try to re-enable it and see if possibly it gets a DHCP address. If it doesn't, then we know our DHCP server for this lab is not handing out the IP address. Then I want to try something because I'm interested in knowing if it's even booting because the DHC, let's drill down in here, folks. We should be able to find our DHCP server. I can't see it. It didn't show it to me. But if it would, we might could actually ping it. Yeah, and it's not working. So let's try something here. Let's try actually giving it a static IP address and see if that router's even booting. Oops. 0.10. Hey, Richard, how are you doing? So let's
Hey, had to unmute my microphone there.
That's all right.
It took me a little longer to run home from the college, so that's why I'm checking in 5 minutes late.
That's no problem at all. No problem. Nope. So it looks like it's not even booting the router for some reason. That was it's supposed to boot and provide DHCP in this lab. So let me put that on the list of to-dos. Yep, it's not working at all. So be aware, you may, at this point, lab 1717 may not work for you. You might do the lab on your local machine at home, actually, using the lab. So if you want to try that, you could try that. Richard, I'm gonna have you turn off your video if you don't mind, just so I can reduce the size of that. Oh, I got it. There it goes. So 17. Let's see if we could do this one at home. Nope. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. I'll figure that one out, and we will we'll go from there. Okay. Now I do know, folks, Gail got confused, and I understand fully why, because you'll look and see here the way I broke things up. I tried to make it to where you weren't doing these huge sections and then trying to catch up, but I also ended up with some confusion, because you'll notice I've got you reading modules 5 through 8 here and doing those labs 5 through 8, and then down here modules 9 through 11, but then the test is for 5 through 10. Well, obviously I didn't want to have you do 5 through 10, which would have been 5 full modules for a week. So I broke them up that way. So be aware, it's a little bit weird, but it was the only way I could figure out to kind of break the content up so that you're not doing, 10 or 5 to 6 modules in 1 week. If this is confusing, you can break it up however you want for your own classes. This is what I found with this first go round of using this particular new experience setup. So if you want something different, then feel free to change it, because it's your class, so you can definitely do it however you wish to do. Any questions before? Yeah, go ahead, Gail.
Kelly, this is Gail. Number one, I'm checking out my new mic and headset. So, and
Cool.
yes, it must work. And so the other thing is, what really confused me was that I couldn't, and I'd have to log in to see exactly what it was, but it was like 9 and 10, I couldn't log in to read. It said that I didn't have access to read that. Now, if I went to 11 and I backed up, then, I could get to it. It was something strange like that. That's what confused me. And I could have sworn that I saw an exam 5 through 8 on the thing at one point in time, but I'm like a chicken with its head cut off this semester. So possibly that was like a figment of my imagination.
Well, yeah, I don't think there is one. Pretty sure, but you're right. Well, I don't have a modules 9 and 10 content. I've got modules, well, it's right here, 5 to 10 content. Yep. So see, that's how they did it. They want you to do 5 full things, and I can't pull it. There's no way to, to pull it. I guess I could make a link just to module 9 or module, but you could actually do that, folks. If you wanted one for just module 9, what I could do is this. I could go in here and say, select this, and I should be able to go and say, okay, so right here, turn editing on. If I'm gonna be honest with you folks, if I was not an ASC and teaching instructors, I would probably be using my Canvas system. on my campus because we use Canvas. But since I'm an ASC and I know everyone's going to be using, probably going to be using these, but I could do, let's see how we can do this. We can do, I'll just do a URL, and this will be module 9. I keep calling them chapter module 9. And even though it's not really an external URL, put that there. And then if you click here, it'll pop you over straight to module 9. So, you know, I could do that for read modules 9 and 11. I could do that right there. And if I'd known, again, if it was going to cause confusion, I would have done it. I apologize. So there's module 9. But you can do links like that so that you're able to point directly to things in the curriculum. Now, one of the things that happens a lot of times, though, is those links don't work if you haven't already accessed the curriculum once. So you may get a, and this was true with the old system too, but you get like a access denied. But since I've opened it already, it lets me go right in to the module. So, but yeah, I'm pretty sure there wasn't a 5 through 8 group exam. It's just this one here. So, but yeah, I agree. I'm kind of running around with chicken with my head cut off too. I mentioned I run our whole data center, and I don't run the whole thing by myself by any imagination. I got a great crew that works with me, but we're definitely trying our best to stay ahead of the semester. Okay, I want to talk about chapter 13. Now, one of the things about we've talked a little bit about how pretty much 5 through 10, almost really 5 through 12. If your students have had Cisco 1 and 2, you're going to be able to blow through those sections pretty quickly. These next couple sections here in terms of 13, 14, 15 on down, these you're going to be able to blow through fairly quickly if you've had a student take Sec 110 or a Security Plus class. Because if we look at these particular sections or modules, you'll see that all of this is pretty much straight out of a Security Plus beginner class. So the difference, I had to wait a second there, my internet went unstable, so I stopped and hopefully it didn't get too choppy. But the difference between a threat, a vulnerability, and attack surface, this is exactly what we did this week on Monday when we took NetLabs down. We took it down to reduce our attack surface so that we could do away with the vulnerability. We also have implemented some more security features in our network. And one of the things I will mention to you is as we were putting these in, one of the key items I always teach is we put them in a little bit at a time. For instance, we turned on Wildfire. If any of you know Palo Alto, we turned on Wildfire for our data center. Well, we turned it on for just one part of the data center to begin and looked at how much it affected throughput on the network. Then we turned it on for 2 portions of the data center. And then now, tomorrow, we're turning it on for all of the data center after getting a good look at how those changes affect our system. So have any of you been patching systems this week for your ESXi stuff or for your VMware stuff? Do any of you run your own systems? I know, Kirby, you run your NetLabs.
Yeah, I do, but we have not patched anything.
Okay. Well,
sounds like I need to get on it though.
Well, and honestly, the thing about it is, looking at the way the system is accessed, I don't really think we were very vulnerable. But I didn't want to take a chance on because it was such a huge vulnerability. If you look at the one that was just put out, I think somebody put something in chat. Let me look. Oh, back. Okay. This one right here, you'll see, but it was basically a 9.8 out of a 10. So it's complete remote code execution with, like I said, you look at that kind of CVSS v3, and we'll talk about CVSS in the future, but if you look at that range, 10's the max. So we moved that to the top of our line. In fact, we were taking we upgraded all 3 systems, 3 different systems Monday, and then Brandon's actually upgrading our final system today because we had classes end on it yesterday. But this is, again, about as bad as I have seen. And we'll actually talk about CVSS, common vulnerability scores, as we move through this class, but you'll see that that is huge. So if you're running ESXi or vCenter, I strongly, this is particular vCenter, strongly recommend getting your vCenter updated sooner than later, because it's pretty bad. But here's the one thing that makes it didn't bother me as much about NetLabs, is because they had to be on the same network segment as the host. And so they had to access port 427. Once they do that, though, they can run full code at root level. So it's real bad on that respect. So, or actually it's up here, sorry. Well, network access port. This one is network access port, but it's still, you've got to have that port open to the outside world. And 443, that's pretty, if you've got it open to the outside world, it's pretty common port. It's SSL. But most of our NetLab servers don't have their ESXi servers actually facing the internet or remotely accessible via the internet. But I would get it fixed if you got it. So, any questions about that? Anybody else managing their network? I think we're pretty unique. I know Kirby, you do it. Anybody else in this group actually run their own servers that are used by students for their online classes?
I do, Kelly.
You do? Okay. Richard does.
I run my own vSphere and vCenter server environment in the classroom.
Okay.
And then they're able to VPN back into the classroom. We have an open VPN client.
Yep.
And they can remote back to the classroom, and using VMware Workstation, they can reconnect to all their machines.
Oh, that's cool. I would definitely patch your servers in, because you're probably running a vCenter or vCenter. Get that thing patched, because
I ran the update on it, I think yesterday, and it came back clean. It said no available update. So
you should be good then.
Yeah.
Good. But that's another way of doing things to be able to get people into your systems, which is nice. Gail, would you say something?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, we have our own, NetLabs. I
Right.
don't oversee it though. Somebody else does.
Right.
I'm sure he's on top of it. Over.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's a pretty bad one. All right, so hacker versus a threat actor. Now, hacker really should not have been given the negative connotation that it was given, because in the past, hackers were just people that like to tinker, people like us. We like to take things apart and hopefully get them put back together again. Threat actors are really a better way of looking at people, but we've got white hat hackers. Those are our security experts that are trying to actually lock things down. Gray hat hackers, which is probably, quite honestly, I would say most of us fall into a gray hat hacker type thing, simply because a lot of times we use our powers for good, but everybody can be tempted. We try to always be white hat hackers, and we definitely don't want to be black hat hackers, which are people who are unethical criminals who violate computer network security. The problem is that we need to stay pure white hat hackers, because even people with good intentions sometimes get drawn into the gray hat hacker. They say, well, I'm gonna run this scan because I know how to do it, just to show my school what needs to be done. And then suddenly you get in trouble because of it. So that's one thing to teach your students is, with great power comes great responsibility. So they need to know that. We've also seen a growth, folks, in the evolution from script kiddies to state-sponsored hacking, which is, it's really now to the point to where we're seeing so many actors. I'll tell you a great example. How many of you have heard of Cyberpunk 2077? Anybody heard of it? It's a video game. So if you haven't heard of it, don't feel bad. But it's a video game that has had a rough start. It needs several patches. But one of the things about Cyberpunk 2077 is they've had to delay the patch because the company CDPR has been the victim of a ransomware attack. And so the company, people working for it can't get access to their PCs in the office to work on the patch. And so the ransomware attack has stopped the ability for that company to even VPN into its network. They've been unable to access their local machines for 2 weeks. So the patch is being delayed. They're refusing to pay the ransom, basically what it comes down to. We all know that here in North Carolina, CPCC has been a recent victim of a ransomware attack. The used to be a bunch of script kiddies just wanting to kind of cause trouble, and now it's got up to people selling vulnerabilities, people trying to make money off of it. Give me 10 Bitcoins and I'll unlock your servers. But even worse, I think, is once we get into state sponsored, to where we're actually attacking one another. One of the reasons that is so dangerous is, we all pretty much know about Stuxnet, where the centrifuges were destroyed in the Iranian nuclear program. But what if something like that was developed, and they've actually developed to destroy generators or motors, and then that was accidentally released on the internet, and then suddenly power grids go down. Great example, and look at Texas, how quickly their grid went down, and how quickly really all of our grids are sitting on the edge of a knife right now. So cyber criminals, we basically look at some of our tasks here that we have as a cybersecurity expert, looking for vendors, updating things. I mean, regular penetration tests. How many of you know the last time a penetration test was done on your network? In fact, we used to, back when I was the head of our cybersecurity program at Stanley Community College, I was good friends with the IT director, and we would actually run a penetration test through one of my classes on the network every year. Some of the most fun we had was with our social engineering attacks that we would do. Would spoof emails and tell people to put their passwords in an envelope, and I'd send, and a workstation was going to come around to pick it up to look at it because of password auditing taking place by the state. Believe it or not, we would get people to give us their passwords that way. So crazy things like that. I will say we're starting to do better as a society with security. When my 9-year-old nephew, who turned 10 today, called me the other day and said, "Hey, have you turned on two-factor authentication on your Fortnite account yet?" And I'm like, "What? Do you even know what two-factor authentication is?" And he told me what it was. He said, "Yeah, now you can gift me V-Bucks." I'm like, "Okay, all right, now I see your real reason for wanting me to do it, is so you can get free V-Bucks." But that's nice to see that we're kids as young as 9 and 10 know what two-factor authentication is. What we're trying to do, we're trying to learn how to see whether or not our networks have been attacked. We're going to be looking at SIM tools, and we're going to be looking at how, I like this, what color is my hat? What is this? I hacked ATM without authorization, discovered vulnerabilities. I contacted them and was going to share it. Probably a gray hat, isn't it, when you think about it? So I like this. I like the fact that this one is, this goes through and kind of says, hey, what's what? And this is something we need to spend time with our students on, to let them know what's right and what's not. Now, here's one of the things that back in the old days, you had to have a very good knowledge of programming and highly skilled in order to do your attacks, high technological knowledge. Now, as we've gotten into 2015 and beyond, I know some of this needs updating, but now you can just go and you can buy yourself a botnet and you can perform a DDoS attack, or you can go get simple malware delivery tools and you can try to attack a box with very little work. You think about password crackers and wireless hacking tools and all these packet sniffers and things that are out there. You can just go get you a security derivative of a Linux. It's got all the tools you need to hack into networks, and away you go. You can even have those tools updated with the new vulnerabilities, so that now that this vulnerability is available on VMware, I'm sure it's already been added to all the hacking tools out there. Here's our different types of attacks. Again, all of these would have been discussed in a Security Plus class, but eavesdropping, data modification, spoofing, password-based attacks, denial of service, man in the middle, all of those are there. So this is just an overview of those items. So
Kelly,
go ahead. Yeah.
you mentioned earlier, you asked us if we're doing scans of our own networks that would expose any potential vulnerabilities.
Yep.
And apparently I was sent a little report from our IT manager. Apparently he said that the North Carolina Community College system has contracted with MCNC in Durham to do a monthly scan of all the external networks of all the community colleges. And they provide a report that has the CVE record numbers of potential exposures. And on the 2 public IPs I have in my classroom, it came back with about 3 CVE records of possible exposures, on those public IP addresses.
Right.
So apparently the community college system is doing that now.
And they have been for a while. We get the same thing. And then that's
okay.
Well, actually, the good news is when you don't get anything from your IT department.
Okay.
And that a lot of times they don't even, unless, and the good thing you send it to you, because now you need to fix those CVEs.
Right.
Or again, always, it may be something that you can't fix and you have to just either shut it down or decide that you're going to accept the risk. That's another thing you have to think about. But yeah, we have been contacted before and had to turn off a certain version of SSH because it was vulnerable to a CVE. By the way, this is the mitra.org. This is a CVE where we do common vulnerabilities and exposures. And you can actually search the CVE list and see different CVEs. We'll talk more about this. You see there's almost 150,000 total records. But we can, let's see if we can search, not by ID. I want to do it by.
But they had come back, and one of mine was, it pointed at my OpenVPN server was still set to a default lower, TLS level of 1.0, for example, and it said you should be using it at a minimum. You should have this set to 1.2, things like that.
That's good to know, because that's a lot of times easy for you to actually go ahead and fix. Yeah, pretty easy to fix. So let's go.
Yeah, and the rest of it said, hey, here's some open ports we found, and if you're not using them, close them up. Just basic stuff like that.
And that's something, again, good to know, because sometimes, when you load especially some versions of, there's the CVE right there. And if we dig into it, you can actually see very deep. This is one of them here. But you can see a deep dive on it and how it's been placed in there. But on some versions of or operating systems you load, they've got things loaded you don't even know they're turned on. So, but you can see here, this tells you 7X before and 6.7 before U3L or U3.1. So you probably were already running, Richard, 6.7 U3.1, and that's why you were okay.
Right.
And we were too, but we went ahead and used it as a time to update everything as far as we possibly could. One thing to be careful with, I will tell everyone, if you do start to upgrade servers like this, especially with VMware, be aware that some processors do not support newer, they'll run 6.5, they won't run 6.7, or they'll run 6 and they won't run 6.7. So be careful. If you decide, hey, I'm gonna upgrade this server to 6.5 from 6.0, you may suddenly find out it won't work because that processor is no longer supported, which is very aggravating. But that's what they're doing here when they talk about CVEs, and we'll talk about that in the class too a little bit later. But each one of these CVEs is made up of a set of different factors that gives them their score. Have you, Kirby, has your IT department given you any information?
No, our IT department keeps to themselves.
Well, typically I don't hear from ours unless they found something that needs to be fixed.
Yeah, right.
I will say that we have been talking very closely with them recently because we did turn on Wildfire, and we turned on anti-spyware, anti-malware on the data center. We wanted to keep an eye on throughput to see what we could do there. But so, all right. Any questions? I'm going to jump forward to module 14. Just talk about all of these. I'm pretty sure you know about. What's the difference, everyone, between a virus and a worm? Anybody? Gail or somebody want to tell me the difference between a virus and a worm?
The way they propagate.
Okay, so a worm can
Propagate across the network until it fills it up. A virus needs a host system.
Yep, a virus has got to have somebody to move it themselves. So typically, sneakerware or forwarding the virus via email or something of that nature. Trojan horses, love this because it's this right here scares me the most when I watch kids today. How many of you have seen kids have a very short attention span? And I have never seen kids, you give a kid a phone and next thing you know, they download 27 different games on it. And literally they don't even take the time to learn the rules of one game before they're downloading another one because they got bored with it. To me, that whole ecosystem is rife with the possibility of Trojan horses. So that scares me that, people, you say it's a free game, they'll download it in a heartbeat. So very, very big problem there. But obviously it's something that appears to be one thing, but is another. Types of Trojan horses, those that will give you remote access, data sending, destructive, those that actually corrupt files and delete files, keyloggers, those types of things. Worms, obviously code infection, 19 hours later, red worm, code red, and then when it took off. I still say that this, you can't really blame Microsoft for, because unless I'm mistaken and I've forgotten this, the code red patch had been out for a year when this thing actually blew up.
You are correct.
So to me, that's on administrators, not Microsoft. If there's been a patch out for a year and you don't patch your system, then you got to take some responsibility at some point. SQL Slammer. Now this one's a little bit. This one jumped out there in a hurry. I don't think this one was in the same time frame in terms of the patches had been out for as long, but I do think there were patches there. But you can see how fast these things jumped out and caused problems. So worms are a major issue because of the fact they self-propagate. So they enable some vulnerability, then they propagate themselves, and then they have a payload, and then their whole job then is to move on and do the same thing again. So they, quote, worm their way through the system. And as we have everything attached to the internet, well, we have a lot of trouble with, or could have a lot of trouble with worms. How do we stop worms? Anybody? Let's see, I'm gonna pull my, Joseph, how do we stop worms? Joseph, you may not have a mic that works. If you don't.
How do you stop a worm? You step on it?
Yeah, that's one way. In our security world, how do we stop them?
Let's see. You'd have some type of detection, some type of antivirus software running.
Yep.
Or malware software that would be running.
You could definitely do that. Remember, we talked about intrusion prevention systems. They are built to see worm-like behavior. Also, we would say keep your systems patched, because if your systems are patched, then they should not be vulnerable to worms. Now, there's always going to be that day zero worm. Does everybody know what a day zero vulnerability is? Or a 0 day? That's a vulnerability that has no patch and has not been known about until it is actually released. So a 0-day vulnerability is basically, we know about it the day it hits. So, okay, Joseph, I'm on. Okay. Now, other ways you could stop worms would be through we talked a little bit about the next generation firewalls. Next generation firewalls have the ability to see worm-like behavior and then start blocking that behavior. So that's another way that we could do it. This has become very, very scary because ransomware is going in and encrypting systems and blocking access for people. And you know what really is bad is you think about if your backups are online also, if the people doing the ransomware are smart, they actually encrypt your backups in also your systems. Then you got to sit and say, is it worth paying the money to actually unlock your systems, which some people have done, or do you have to completely redo your system and bring it back up from backup? There's been several big examples of this in North Carolina with community colleges, and that's one of the reasons too it scared me to try to get my stuff fixed up. But
Hey, Kelly.
Yes, sir.
Has anyone from Central Piedmont shared with the community where they think their exposure happened?
No, because it's ongoing and the FBI is involved. So I don't think they have. I know was it Rockingham Community College had the same thing happen to them, and it was not shared widely either. I think I wish they would do a better job of that. I do think, quite honestly, that some of the vectors that have been identified has been VPN connections, remote VPN connections, because we were asked to justify needing VPN access to the network.
That's the rumor here.
Is that the rumor with you, Paul?
Yep.
Okay, there was a VPN connection that caused it. Well, and think about with everybody working from home now, you have extended your network security boundary to everybody's PC at home. And that is very scary. I mean, if I was a network administrator during COVID, I would be very, very scared. My two biggest worries would be bandwidth, simply because we don't have enough bandwidth. But second would be security posture. But if that's the idea there, again, VPN access is what I'm hearing for most of these. So looks like they're exploiting an end host and then using the VPN connection to get into the network. And then, of course, on the inside, most computer networks are not as well protected as on the outside. We try to put a big wall up. The one time we had a bad outbreak at Stanley, that's exactly what happened. Somebody brought in a USB drive that had it on it and launched it intentionally in the classroom. But we were never able to identify the person, unfortunately. So common malware behaviors, obviously, if strange files start opening up, if you can't get to websites, CPU usage. That's why it was so important for you to do the lab on looking at processes on your device, because one of the things you want to kind of get a feel for is how many processes normally run on your device, on your machine, and kind of what your machine does in terms of its normal behavior. Okay, so normal performance. So it's 33% utilization normal, and if that jumps automatically up to 66%, 304 processes, it's actually a whole lot of processes. But if that is normal, then that'll tell you. You can also see my machine's been up for 49 days, which is kind of funny. But that's one of the reasons we do that lab, and also do the same lab on Linux, is so we can see what is normal for your device. Okay. Unknown ports, TCP and UDP ports, strange computer behavior. That's the one that's probably the biggest giveaways, when things are they're slow or they don't act right. Okay. Reconnaissance attacks, typically network attacks begin with a reconnaissance. We all know this. We're going to do recon. We're going to do, this can be up to and including reconnaissance on social media sites, trying to get information about the different people who work for a company. There's a very good series that Cisco did about one of the hacks that hit them, to where they actually had, they had scoured the social media sites of certain executives and found out what music they liked, and then used that to try to entrap them into downloading particular music or sharing music files. So that was very interesting that took place. But trying to do ping sweeps, any type of sweeps, whois.net, looking up all types of records, trying to go back on, look up previous records to see who run a network or who was part of it. But all of that would be part of your reconnaissance. But obviously, most hackers, when they start doing ping sweeps and port scans, you're going to fire off the IDS. So you try your best not to do that until you're ready to truly attack the target. And you do this most time over years if you're really good and you're wanting to have a long-term goal. You're going to do this over a long period of time and grab a lot of information. You then try to get access. So you try to exploit and get in so that you can have access to the network. And then once we have that, we can then try to establish continued access, so unauthorized privileges, create ourselves our own backdoor account, and then from there exfiltrate information as much as possible and try to get that information out. Here's a port redirection where we're compromising a host and then using its trust to exploit another host. Okay, so that's something that's always a big deal there. Trying to do man in the middle, very common with wireless attacks. We know that. And then this buffer overflow attack is actually the actual problem with the VMware. It's just a buffer overflow attack. Actually, that's not on that one. That's on a different one. Yeah, that's the one before this, not this one. That was a buffer overflow attack. Social engineering, folks, a sucker is born every day. We can dumpster dive, shoulder surf, spearfish. We get probably every week 2 to 3 new phishing attacks that come in on our network through our email. I just saw one today. It's from our president, and he's in a conference and he needs us to buy some gift cards and send him the code so he can give it away to people. If you've seen that one, that's hilarious. So we've seen all kind of crazy stuff. But spear phishing is when you actually try to target a specific person. So what you'll do during your reconnaissance is you'll find out who runs the network and what their role is. And then you'll spear phish them and say, hey, I know you're the security person, blah, 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 or you're the server guru. We'd like to have you beta test our software for blah, 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 etc. So all of that is how you would do a spear phishing attack. And then we've got our normal social engineering, how to stop things. Don't trust anybody. It's basically what it comes down to. And also, I do think that this is one right here, report suspicious individuals. I also wonder now, with our campuses being as empty as they are, if we don't need to be a little more careful even about making sure labs are shut if no one's in the building, because of how easy it would be for somebody to walk in and put keyloggers on servers or on devices at this point. And then this is with our VPNs and everything. We really need to stress that people keep their machines secure, because if not, you're really going to be in trouble in your networks. Any questions? Any questions about denial of service attacks? Some of these are almost impossible to stop, folks, because you've got DDoS attacks and you've got them coming from thousands of different zombies. Now you can always black hole the traffic and get actually I had to do this one time in my wife's business. I had to have the internet service provider black hole all traffic coming from Korea. because we were experiencing a DDoS attack from, actually it was a DOS attack from Korea. And so we black holed all of the IP address ranges from there. But a true distributed denial of service attack is extremely difficult to stop because you've got those zombies, and those zombies can, especially if it's big enough, can overwhelm the ability of the servers to handle it and for your service provider to stop it, because you'll start blocking so much traffic that you block all of the legitimate traffic. The good news is we have developed better ways to block this DDoS traffic and see that it's coming from zombies. So you have your client attacker, you have handlers, and then the zombies are the agents. And this could be everything from, the bad news now, it can be everything from a PC to a security camera, to a weather sensor running on a Pi top or running on a Raspberry Pi. And then they launch those attacks. So I'll let you watch that video. It's a good one. Buffer overflows, you know what those are, and you know our evasion methods of trying to, this is something people are using day in, day out. Now, the big thing here that I want to warn you about that people don't think about is I want to warn you about IPv6. Many times IPv6 is turned on systems by default and you don't think about it. We're starting to see more and more people trying to use IPv6 as a method to tunnel their command and control and to control bots and also deliver malware, because on Windows by default IPv6 is turned on, and so you will get an IPv6 address if your routers are set up for it. You'll also get a link local address regardless of whether or not your routers are set up for it. So on the local segment, IPv6 can always be used to move information around. So questions about 13 and 14? No questions? Everything good? All right, I'm gonna stop here and stop the recording and